Hello plant friends, my name is Victoria and you're watching Plantastics. Today I'm just going to be talking about some propagations. I know I've done other videos on this, but I just figured I would do another one. And I'm going to be showing you the different ways that I've just recently learned that you can propagate. So let's say that you got a leaf. What I like to do is I like to cut this stem here. I believe it's called the petiole, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here, and you can see that I've got an angle right there. See, there's an angle, and then you don't have to cut the leaves like I do, but I do this so that way they can fit and look really neat. So I like to do an additional cut, and then these two, so it looks like a perfect square. And I only do that because these standard leaves are a lot larger. I don't do this with the miniatures or the micro mini violets because they're just so small that I don't have to worry about them fitting into the little blocks that I have. So, okay, you have had this leaf in the soil, and you've had some baby plantlets. So you can remove those plantlets and use this leaf again. And I don't know if anybody else does this, but I've had success. So this is the only leaf I was able to salvage from Texas too before it had cyclamen mites. And what I did was I put it in 110-degree water in a little bag to prevent my heater. I have this heater with a little fan, and it keeps the temperature exactly at 110. And I did it for 10 or 12 minutes. It says exactly how to do it in the Growing to Show book, and I was basically just following that, and I was able to save this leaf and maybe some of the other leaves. I can't remember, but obviously I was able to save a Gillian, a Texas 2, and I believe this is Midnight Waterfall. I'll find that out sooner. But yeah, I kept this leaf. So I removed the baby plantlets, and that's what these are. These are the plantlets that came from that leaf. And what I did was I did a clean cut, and as you can see here, it's got roots. So you may be curious, okay, then what happens? Well, here's a great example. So this is Louisiana Lullaby. And I did the same thing with it. So I cut it and re-put it into the soil. And as you can see, I've got roots, and I've even got a little plantlet right here. Can you see that? Hopefully you can. Okay, so you can see there's little tiny plantlets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one in soil. But you can see that there's two different plants here, and potentially a third. This one's really weak, so I'm not going to remove it. But you can see I'm just going to wait until these get a little bit larger. And when they're about this size, I'm going to take them off of that leaf. And honestly, I don't know if it'll produce little plantlets a third time, but I don't see the harm in trying. Now, some of the people have told me that they have issues with that method, and then they have issues with the water method. So they are describing, let's pretend I didn't cut this. They're describing rot starting up the leaf. Well, you're not going to be able to get that rotted section to produce any plantlets. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut just a little bit above where the rotted section is and toss it and start over. So that way you have a better, cleaner cut, and hopefully you won't have any rot there. But yeah, you could also just cut it, I mean, really anywhere. But I just want you to see that this stem right here is not essential to you having plantlets. Because as you can see, this one doesn't have one at all. It's really just a leaf. You could have, honestly, I think about to here if the rot got really bad, and you still have a chance of getting plantlets, because I was able to reuse these after I removed plantlets, and I have plantlets again. And you can see this leaf is pretty messed up looking at this point. But I just wanted to show you that you always have a chance. Like, just don't give up, okay? Okay, so these are different I didn't cut these. You don't have to. Like I said earlier, I just cut them like that so they can fit into my trays. And I have these in water. So if you're impatient, it may be beneficial for you to do water propagations because many people will put them in soil and then they're pulling them out repeatedly and disrupting the roots. So you may want to do that so that way you can always know and you're not really disturbing anything. We have two really nice leaves right here. And this one is Jolly Deer and this one's Picasso. So this is a standard and this is a miniature. And you can see we've got some nice roots. So they're going to send out roots before they ever send out little plantlets. I'm sure there are some varieties that are really funny and they send out plantlets and roots at the same time. So you can see here on Jolly Deer, this tiny little green sprig right here, that's going to be a plantlet and it will eventually turn into something like this. So you can keep these in water until, I like to wait until I have a rosette. Now this, in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I'll feel comfortable in removing them. And I might just cut this leaf to pieces so that way this little tiny plantlet can get some light. Or I might leave it like this. I really haven't quite decided. Either way, I'm still going to have plantlets. I've got these. These are not ready, obviously, but they're just a little bit further. They're not as far in development as these are. So this is honestly kind of like a beginner because it was reset when I recut it. These are like in the middle, and this one's further along because you can see the plantlets. Okay, so now I have these 3 little violets here. And you can see that these are all varying ages. So at some point, you're going to want to start grooming the violets. And I say grooming as in the gardening term. So you have these. Now these, I would not remove any leaves right now. I might remove this one because it's not very attractive, but it's not going to really help or hurt the violet. This one looks a little sickly. This one is probably not going to make it. This one looks really nice. It's got some leaves. It's got more symmetry. This one looks like it's got some mold or something on it. It just looks like it's a little weaker than this one is. And it'll probably die. So that's the cool thing. You can see there's 3 different little plantlets on this one. At least one of these is going to make it. Sometimes all 3 make it. You just really never know. Okay, so I wouldn't remove any leaves here. So we're going to take that one out of the picture. So here is presumed to be Midnight Waterfall. Okay, so you can see that these leaves are getting larger and this leaf is really small. So this is an older leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove it. And this one is honestly going to be smaller than these newer ones. So I'll remove that one too. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I like to get my nail at the base. I also have some tweezers and I like to do it to where I hear a snap. Now these are so small that you're not going to be able to hear that snap. Well, you might have been able to hear that one. But yeah, you can try to propagate these. They're going to require a bit more patience. But it's never a bad idea to try. So now this plant is going to be gradually producing larger and larger leaves. But I'm going to leave these alone. These newer leaves are going to fill it out. And you just remove these smaller leaves because they're going to be shaded out by these larger leaves. And you want the plant to produce more leaves. Okay, so you can see this one's really nice. So if you didn't know this, leaves grow in sets of 3, even though it looks like they're growing in sets of 2. And that's based off of something I read in one of the African Violet magazines. So you may not even know it, but there's a leaf under here. See this one? It's so small. It's being shaded out. Snap. It's gone. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this tag so you can kind of see a little better. So there's one more leaf, but you really can't see it because it's just shaded out here. So I'm going to snap that one off too. All right, so this is where I'm going to stop. And I'm not going to remove leaves every week. It seems like when they're about this size, now these are slower to grow. I'm not going to even look at removing them until they're about this size. But yeah, that's a really, I feel like, easy rule of thumb. Now, I do have a habit of over grooming and over removing leaves. So I think that this is a safe way to remove them. Basically, if you have smaller leaves beneath the larger ones, I just remove those. So you can see that this one, another issue that you can have is you can have the violet plants potted too deep. So these are honestly a little bit too deep. Whenever they get larger, these each are going to get their own pot, but since they're just so small, I put them both in there. And I put some bark in the bottom so I don't overwater them. Now, this one's perfect. See it? We've got the soil and it's just sitting, you know, and it'll fill out. You don't want the plantlets too deep into the soil because then they run the risk of crown rot. And that may be why this one is not doing as well as this one is. This one's got a bit of a longer neck. And this one's a little bit farther into the soil. Granted, I'm not really an expert. I kind of just do this for fun. So this one could just be like a less hardy plantlet in that its fate is kind of doomed. And the other one's just stronger. So you can kind of see this one's perfectly, you know, because you want the leaves to be flat. You don't want them like a teacup because you want there to be airflow, and I use these tiny little fans. They're like the ones that you put in the different little computer parts, and I have them going 24/7 so that way they always have some airflow. Now, something interesting is that these violets, they can produce flowers. They can produce little peduncles, and you can see the very start of one there. So standards, and that's what all three of these are, they can produce little plantlets before they're really full-sized. And just to show you a comparison, I'll show you two other standards. So this propagation's about 6 months old, and it's still not fully grown. This is PT Iania. And I had a little bit of orange crust, which I've been able to fix by flushing the soil. And then here is a really nice and full standard. So you can kind of see just how large that they can become. They don't have to be this size to bloom. But if you really are wanting the plant to grow and focus on leaves, you may want to remove those peduncles. This peduncle is so incredibly small that I might do more harm to the leaves in trying to remove it. So I like to just leave them be. And if they bloom, then I just take that as a really good sign. Now, these are too early to fertilize, and this one is getting to be about the age where I can do a super weak fertilizer. The plantlets need a super watered down fertilizer. And what I've been using is, it's a kelp, like a hormone stuff, and then Super Thrive and a little bit of the foliage food. I haven't been using the blooming food on them, and I don't really remember if I fertilized them or not. I think I might be about to fertilize this one, but this one may be too small. And you don't have to. You could just repot them or leave them be. It's really whatever you want to do. But yeah, I just wanted you to see that if you have rot, it's not the end of the world. If you have a super rare leaf and you've had some plantlets, you could probably reuse it. I mean, this is its second go round, and look, it's still got plants coming off of it. So you can keep growing little plantlets. I'd be very curious to see if this small leaf produces any plantlets. Of course, I'll keep you updated. It may be a month or two from now, simply because it's so small. But yeah, so I hope that you're able to kind of see just the progress that the violets can take. So you've got you know, once you've removed them, you've got plantlets kind of like these, and then they're going to get to this size, and then this size, and then there's quite a gap in time between this size and this size. And then at some point, maybe within a year or two, you may have one that's this large. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video so other people can see it, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I have violets and I also have other plants. And then if you'd like to, you know, really support the channel, I've got some of these pots listed in their Amazon links if you're curious. I'll be seeing you next time. Goodbye.